Hello, and welcome to our Where Firms Lose Time and How Tech Can Give It Back webinar. I'm your host today, Rob Roach, Director of Underwriting at Oak Street Funding. And joining me today is Daleele Alison, CEO of RooksDM, and Rick Dennen, founder and CEO of Oak Street. Today, we'll be discussing the hidden inefficiencies that slow teams down, how leaders can decide when to simplify versus when to invest in new tools, and what it takes to make automation and AI work in practice, and more. Rick and Daleele, thank you both for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for
Start
having me.
things off, yeah. To start things off, Daleele, would you mind sharing with our audience a little bit more about yourself and Rook's DM?
Yes, thanks again for having me, Rob and Rick. My name is Daleele Allison, CEO of RooksDM. My background has been in technology, been in the tech space for well over a decade now, and it's all been around how do you use technology to work more efficiently and solve real-world business problems. And where I spend most of my time today at RooksDM is working with our amazing clients and prospective clients to both guide them on which tools will allow them to work more efficiently and also work with our delivery team to help them implement those specific solutions across their firm so they can gain the tools they need to drive efficiency across the firm.
Great. Moving to our discussion today, um, Daleele, where do firms typically lose most of their time in their day-to-day work without realizing it?
Yeah, it varies depending on the firm. Where we see time wasted the most, they don't even think about it. So it's a lot of like the copy and pasting between systems. So lack of integration obviously causes that. So there's a lot of copy and pasting of data from one location to another. Data collection is a big one. So we spend a lot of times working with firms, helping them map out and think through what's the best way to be able to collect that data and then move the data into the appropriate location so they don't have to copy and paste it. Simple things such as scheduling as well too. Not a huge time sucker, but still firms have challenges with scheduling. Obviously, there's so many great tools that you can use, Jira reminders, Calendly, so on and so forth. But helping them think through what are their scheduling rules, and then how does the tool allow them to do scheduling much more efficiently than having to do it manually. So those are just a few ways. But like I said, it depends on the firm and where they're at. There's so many different areas of opportunities to use technology to run more efficiently.
Yeah, I guess I wanted to just add a quick question to Dalil on this one, because back in my Deloitte days, I remember doing projects whereby having to go back and recollect data. And I think sometimes firms don't realize all the data that they're going to need in the future. And then they'll hire consultants such as yourselves to say, hey, you know what? I do need this now. How can we recreate it? What's the easiest way to get this data back in the system so that we can use it? So I bet your resources are high demand right now, especially with AI.
Yeah, you bring up a good point as well too, because data standards are a big piece of that. And now with AI, a lot of firms or just people in general are using it as like the silver bullet to solve all problems. And we go back to the drawing board to say, hey, what are your data standards? Where does this data need to live? How does it? How are you collecting it, and things of that nature, and helping them really think through best practices on being able to collect, process, store, and route data to the appropriate locations.
How about as far as cleansing data and the integrity of the data? That seems like another big topic that I would think you would be touching on a lot.
Yep, definitely. And that's I actually just did a whole nother talk around this, around the data collection piece, and why data collection is really important because it helps you be able to gather cleaner data up front. So if you have a process into which you and your team do it in the standard way, and you have tools to be able to support that standardization, it makes it easier for the data integrity to be better and for you to capture all the information you need up front without having to go back and forth to your clients or other people to collect that information.
Yeah, and I think that was a big thing here at Oak Street when we started building a proprietary piece of software 20 some years ago. And I think now with each loan file we have, I want to say there's 187 pieces of information per loan on
Right.
customers and just things we needed so that we didn't have to go back and recapture. So good work there.
Forms are a good tool for that. So we use a lot of different online form tools, and sometimes the clients that we work with say, "Hey, I don't want to send a link to a form to one of my clients." So we can say that's perfectly fine. You don't have to do that. You can use it as an internal tool and have your internal team members still use an online form to submit the data because then it ensures the person that's doing it internally has the information they need across the firm and not to their role only. Because sometimes what ends up happening is they say, "Hey, I don't need that right now. I can get it later," and they don't realize the impact that it has downstream to the people that have to support the process moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then Rick, from a leadership perspective, when you're evaluating or we're the company's deciding maybe which direction to go, what usually holds the firm back from deciding to adopt a new technology?
For me, I think it's the people at the top making decisions. Do they have a good understanding of what the technology can do, how hard it is to develop, the impact to the bottom line? And, certainly over the years, we've seen a number of different approaches where, maybe the younger generations are, let's just throw a piece of technology at it, we'll fix a problem. And that's not always the best, easiest case. Certainly not always the cheapest case. But I think it's that understanding of what it can do. And then if you do go ahead and implement something, then it's the commitment and the acceptance that this is going to fix it and we're going to make this happen. And then you get the whole team in the process along to make it work and make it effective. Otherwise, I think you can get through an entire process and you really haven't solved anything.
And then Dalil, what are some of the biggest workflow issues that you see as firms grow and continue to get bigger and busier with that?
Yeah, I think it's dependent on where they are within their journey. So if a firm is in high growth mode, obviously they're looking to acquire net new clients, and they're having clients go through the intake process. So that is one area of opportunity that we see that becomes a pain point, is because they have all these net new leads coming in. They can be coming in from a variety of sources. It could be an online board, could be a referral, could be via email, phone calls, so on and so forth. So not having a structured way to be able to collect those leads as they're coming in and route the appropriate data into the appropriate system. So a good example is if they are getting leads from an online board, that typically is someone filling out a form from that online site. They should have a direct integration with their CRM. So once someone fills out the form, that data goes into their CRM, and then they could even set up workflow automations to automatically reply back to that person. So we always say if you can use workflow automations in that degree, it's helpful because you meet the person where they're at, and they can send an auto reply saying, "Hi, Dalil, thank you for filling out the form. The next step in our process is to book a time with one of our amazing advisors." So that's like one area of opportunity if they're in growth mode there. Onboarding is certainly a big one as well too, and that's where it goes back to data collection and ensuring they have the appropriate mechanism to collect the data upfront, so they don't have to go back and forth to open the new account, to get them set up in systems, so on and so forth.
Right. There's nothing worse than finding all this new clients and not being able to contact them or not being able to be with them. So,
Yeah.
and Rick, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but you know, when you're looking at a new technology, how can leaders tell whether the process needs new technology or just needs to be simplified?
Yeah, it's kind of a continuation of the last question, to be honest with
Right.
you, where, hey, let's just throw a new piece of software at
Right.
something and it'll fix all of our problems. And I think that goes back to that understanding. It's like, what can it really do? How hard is it going to be to implement? How hard is it going to be to integrate? I would say typically, maybe just being a CPA of the past, it's always, what's the cheapest way to do it? Well, let's fix the process. We've always tried to take an approach around here of keeping the process as simple as possible with, the fewest touch points as we can. So we're always looking at ways to simplify the process. We call it around here taking slices of cheese out of the process so that we don't have to, just keep, extending and doing different things. But there's, times that I remember we did like an optical character recognition type software that we implemented. It cost us about 2 grand, and we had set up training, and we never even had to do training because it was so easy and implemented so quickly, and it was saving such a tremendous amount of time for us that people just went from desk to desk to desk, and it was implemented the day it was, kind of uploaded into our system. So, there's certainly things that you can do that are simple like that, but I think you've got to do a deeper dive up front to say, okay, what's my cost of doing this? What's the true implementation time? And what are the benefits to say, this is my return on, an investment of a piece of
Mhm.
software.
Right. Right. Then, Dalil, as you've seen, why do some firms invest in technology? Um, but I think so many of us have seen this, but feel like nothing gets faster or easier.
I think Rick is spot on, and that's our philosophy as well. Process first, technology second. They come in thinking that technology is going to solve all the problems, and it doesn't. So then they become frustrated with spending all this time and money towards it. To be quite frank, without addressing what he's saying of what is our process, how does this technology fit into the process, how can we focus on the majority. I like his analogy of taking the cheese analogy that he used there, trying to limit the amount of pieces. I think that's spot on, and being very intentional. We like I said, our philosophy is process first, technology second. So when firms do approach us, we usually ask them, "Hey, what is it that you're looking to solve, and can we get to the root issue um, of this pain point, of this friction, of this challenge, or maybe even goal that you're looking to solve?" And once we can determine that, then we ask the question of, does technology fit into it, and where does technology fit into it? Because then that dictates what solution our team will recommend to the firm. So I kind of point it back to exactly what Rick is saying in terms of how to go about making decisions when investing in technology.
Yeah.
And I will say, we started this technology that we built here with kind of an underwriting and servicing platform. And then we put up front a purchase CRM and a back end purchase accounting. And I think one of the best decisions we've ever made was the fact that we said, let's build our own CRM so that it's integrated with our system. Let's build the back end accounting, risk analytics, and all those types of things, because you see a lot of companies that have a different CRM that you got integration issues. And then you've got a different underwriting. I mean, and I'm just speaking about banking, but then you got a different servicing platform, a different accounting. In any time one of those systems change their program or do a release, well, now you've got a whole different integration issue. And it's not, just one little bit harder, but it becomes exponentially harder to manage 6 different pieces of software. And I've seen companies up near 75 different softwares that are used and integrated and going back and forth and has to talk. And it becomes a disaster. So kind of going back to the simplification, using less software that can do more, seems to be a good thing. But for us, having one piece of software that's a Microsoft-based product that's expandable has really made us efficient over the years.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, or what Rick had mentioned as well too, it sounds to me like the intentionality that he had around going to implement the custom piece of software in terms of like their CRM, and then also the strategy behind it. Because you see, he said we started here with this module or component, and then we added to it. So being very thoughtful and methodical and having a strategy in place of how you're going to go about building that is definitely key.
Yeah.
Right. And starting with the underwriting,
Yeah.
the
The underwriters, they're the well, those are the guys you have to teach how to turn on the computer.
that's right. Not lying there.
Just kidding.
When a firm does start introducing new technology and automation, Rick, how can leaders smooth out this adoption process? As you were talking about, bringing kind of everybody on board.
Um, I think showing that commitment is using it yourself. Using, you got to get in there, in my opinion, and you've got to, I'm not saying you got to be on the front end doing the testing of that software before it gets released. If you want to, sure. Nowadays we've got 6 or 7 programmers here and testers, but I think it's get in there, use the software. How easy is it to use? Is it difficult to get stuff out? Is it difficult to make changes going forward? How can you make it more efficient? But just showing that you, as a leader and the leadership team, using that software, again, committed to that software day to day, will show everybody that, hey, this is what we're using. We better make it work. We better make it better. We've got programmers at our fingertips, and that's what we're supposed to do here. And it's part of the culture and the fabric of how we're going to be more efficient and really drive bottom line.
Right. And then kind of, I think stepping into, the hot topic now, AI. As we talk about its use in the workplace and how people are figuring, still figuring out how best to use AI. Dalil, what should firms have in place before they start adding AI into their workflows?
Yeah, that's a good question. Certainly revisiting their processes, kind of like what we're talking about here, having a good understanding of, hey, where can we be more efficient and how does technology fit into that? Reviewing policy and procedures and standards are extremely important at this state, especially with incorporating AI into it. Um, there's the saying like garbage in, garbage out. It's no different with AI. If it doesn't have the right access to the appropriate data, or it has to filter through so much information to be able to give you a response, the likelihood of the response being quality lowers or lessens, if you will. So ensuring you have the right standards in place across the firm, and then identifying ROI. So thinking about it from the standpoint of, hey, where can AI where will AI provide the greatest return on investment? Some of it is very low hanging fruit. So you mentioned like Microsoft, we're big in the Microsoft ecosystem and leveraging Microsoft Copilot. Main reason for that is right now, if you're in the Microsoft world, you have access to Copilot. If you get the enterprise version, Copilot has access to email, calendar events, Teams messages. If your documents on SharePoint, it can access so much data and give you responses based off of the data it has access to relatively quick. So I can say, hey, I'm getting ready to meet with Rick and Rob for a webinar. Help me prepare for that. It can go and look at the emails and synthesize that information and give me a summary and said, hey, you had some interaction with Rick a couple months ago at a conference. You may want to bring that up if it's part of the conversation. So looking at it in that lens, A, making sure all the standards, policies, and procedures are in place, but B, figuring out where the quick wins are. And Copilot is certainly one of those. And then to Rick's point again, is being intentional and building out. We're spending a lot of time with firms helping them think through if they did want to build a custom AI agent, what does that look like? What's the ROI associated with it? What are some prerequisites that we need to have done ahead of building the agent, working with them through that instead of just saying, hey, we're going to throw an agent at the problem and hopefully it solves it. It's being that having that mindset of being intentional of, hey, these are the things that we're going to work on and this is how we're going to go about working on it, and this is the result or the outcome that we're hoping to get achieved by building out this agent, if you will.
Right. And I think it seems like that intentionality is such a big thing because it's such a big universe of what, AI can do, it appears can do. And so figuring out exactly kind of that with some specificity, what you want it to do, I think is something that would be really hard for folks. So as you're seeing things, how are firms changing the way they operate, as automation becomes more common, as you're working through your firms you're working with?
Yeah, it's more of the how. So, like a good simple agent that people can implement is if you have standard operating procedures, for example, those are typically massive long documents that you could send to a team member and say, hey, here's our SOPs, please go review them. Instead of them scrolling through a Word document, you can load that into an agent, have an agent be able to understand your SOPs. And if someone has a question about a specific operating procedure, they can just ask the agent versus having to scroll through a document. So, it's changing the how they're working. The agent still needs access to that information. It still needs the knowledge base to be able to reference it, but it allows the team member to be able to quickly or easily ask a question to the agent saying, hey, this is what I'm looking for. And it can provide that response versus having to scroll through a document. So that's like one simple example, if you will, in terms of how it's changing the way that people are working or how firms are implementing it.
Yeah, saving time by directing people the information they want quicker, right? So,
Yep.
um, Rick, I think, this is I think a great question. Um, how do you think leaders should decide where AI belongs in their business versus, where you have human judgment still, in that process and where that judgment matters most versus AI?
Rob, it sounds like you're working on job security when I hear the
There's
question.
no way a computer could do what underwriting does, right? So,
Yeah, and right now, I mean, you guys mentioned it. I mean, AI is just everywhere. I just came back from a conference in California in, the CPA space in one entire day, about 1.5 day conference. was about AI in usage of AI. And so you kind of sit back, being an auditor of the past with Deloitte, I think you can do a lot of things, just like with, the way we underwrite. I think if there's enough data there, and if the data is accurate, I think you can get some good decisions out of it. And there's certain things that have enough data to make that happen. As we were talking to our IT people, the amount of data that is needed was, much larger than I originally thought to make, really good decisions and really consistent decisions. So, um, human judgment, as we're looking at loan portfolios, to me, the numbers are always handled by you and your team. I always look as my job is to say, you know, look at the owner, look at the people that are operating this business, and how are they going to respond in a troubled situation? Because the one thing we know when we look at projections, that the next day that they're wrong, and we know that. It might be 0.01%, it might be 20%, but every loan that we provide, we know that the projections given are wrong the next day, and we've got to be fluid. So to me, my job, I feel, is about underwriting the ownership in the management team to look at a response. And that would be something to me, for example, is pretty hard for AI to evaluate. You're not going to have data on that management, enough data on that management team in different scenarios to say this is how exactly they're going to respond or how they're going to perform, in a rising interest rate environment or, a hard market or a soft market, a good economy, a bad economy. So there's just not enough there. So I don't think those type of decisions will just be moved to AI and these companies are going to be run through technology. I don't think that's going to happen. So to me, the integrity of data, enough data that you can make good decisions, but it's never going to be, with underwriting, the binary of yes, we're using AI or we're not using AI.
Very good. So we still need people in underwriting.
Yeah,
Perfect.
at least another week.
At least another week.
We call it human in the loop. And it goes back again to Rick's point about the process of figuring out what checkpoints you need that human to intervene along the journey. So,
Yeah.
Right. Right. Because somebody has to interpret the data, right?
yeah.
So, absolutely. Dalil, what tech changes do you think firms should be paying the most attention to over the next few years? We talked about AI, but what other ones, or maybe it's AI?
Yeah, AI is certainly the big one. And like I said, we're spending a lot of time helping them think through which agents make the most sense. To Rick's point again, they have data scattered. At least the firms that we work with are using all of these various different systems that may or may not talk to each other. And then they have some of these integrations built. So it's really getting a clear understanding of where's the data, where do you want the data to live, and how are you gaining insights from that data, and then putting an agent against it so you can get those insights much quicker is one of the things that we're seeing. And so we're spending a lot of time. And I don't know if I talked about this, but having like an AI or tech committee internal to your firm is certainly a big thing because that's helping guide where resources are being spent and helping think through what technology should be implemented when, whether it's AI. AI is certainly one component. Sometimes it's just out of the box software that is not configured appropriately because they don't have their processes in place. I always talk about the scheduling automation one, for example. There's so many different powerful tools that are out there, but just not having your um, calendar standards appropriately set up to know, hey, advisors take meetings at this time or ops team is available during these times and have that embedded into the software in terms of like the rules is a big one as well. So that's where we're spending a lot of time with firms working with their committees to understand where is it do you feel like it within your firm would have a great impact if we were able to use AI or automation to streamline things and then kind of working through that list of items that they have.
Hey, yeah, follow-up question, Dalil, on that. When you're recommending a tech committee, who are you recommending is on that committee? And what I'm really kind of driving at there, I love your opinion on is, are you looking for a lot of diversity in that group, or is it, the top 5 people in your tech group?
Yeah, so it's usually a combination of users, and it usually is we don't, I guess, technically like assign them, but we would suggest if a firm doesn't have one and they're a certain size, that they put one in place. But usually, what we've seen is it'll be someone on the leadership team at minimum, at least one person, and then it would be a variety of different departments. So someone from ops, maybe there's another advisor that's not on the leadership team, or maybe they are there. It could be an associate advisor. So it's a combination of people that would make up that committee. The last firm I talked to, they're roughly like 23 people. They have 5 people on their committee. One person is an admin person, and they part time do some IT related stuff. There was a leadership team member there. There was an advisor, an ops person, and then I believe another. I think it was a CSA. So it was a combination of people that they had assigned to that committee, and that's really important because the diversity allows you to be able to ask the question of why are we taking the time to implement this specific solution and what is it going to ultimately solve. It also gives you the ability for other departments to see the impact that implementing the solution can or cannot have across the firm, because sometimes people are in their silos and they're working on things, so they may have their workarounds in place and not second guess their workarounds because they're like, hey, I need to finish this task and it's going to go over to Rick and he's going to take it on from here, but not truly understanding the impact that Rick is going to feel if they do the workaround versus abiding by the standards or getting some sort of automation um, item in place there. So I don't know if that
Yeah.
answers your question fully.
No, that made a lot of sense, and I agree with it. I think getting that diversity would be you're gonna get to a better answer.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you never know what one change is gonna how that's gonna impact the person on the next level. So
Right.
absolutely. Well,
The
good.
other sorry, just one more thing to add. The other thing that we also look for, which slightly can sometimes be different, is we call them champions. So you were talking about it as well too of and the champions that we identify is when we're implementing a new software, who's going to be the go-to resource that's an internal uh, group of people or person. So like if Rick is having a challenge with the new system, can someone go to Rick and say, "Hey, Rick, I'm really experiencing this." So that serves as a champion because that helps with the internal buy-in. They know, hey, I have a person or people that I can go to once this is rolled out or as we're rolling it out. And we usually try to include those people early on in the process because it helps with the adoption, because the more insight and visibility they have as we're building out these solutions, the better they understand them and the better they can train their internal team members if they have any questions once it gets implemented.
Yeah, great.
Great. Well, I want to thank you both for being here and sharing your insights with our audience. And thank you to those of you who tuned in and submitted questions. We appreciate your viewership. Stay tuned for more from us here at Oak Street Funding with new content and our new guest later on. Thanks again.
Thanks, Daleele.
Thank you. This was great.